Joining us now from Westminster is the Vice Chair of the Metropolitan Police Federation. That's John Tully, who's been working in Gold Command over the last week. I imagine a pretty busy place. John, do you accept we need less of a police service, more of a police force?
Good evening. It's a very difficult debate you're having there, and I think a lot of criticism has been levelled at the police service over the last few days around the level of response that we've given to the disturbances. It's a bit of a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation, really, because we've been criticised in the past for being too heavy-handed, and on other occasions for not being heavy-handed enough. So it's a bit of a deep blue sea out there for us at the moment.
Do you resent perhaps some of those rules that have, those rules of engagement which have made it too difficult for police to go in hard, as it were?
I think what we're after is more direction from senior politicians around what they actually mean when they say they want the streets cleared. Do they want us to go in hard? And if we do, will they back us up when we do so?
As a police officer, I don't know how many years you've given to your policing career, or how strong you feel that sense of vocation. Let's assume you feel it very strongly. How do you feel when you hear, as we did this week, that on Amazon, sales of baseball bats had absolutely rocketed because people no longer trust the police to protect their homes and their families?
Well, that's absolutely disgraceful. I've been a police officer for 26 years, and it is a vocation so far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure the great majority of my colleagues feel the same way. We can't have vigilante groups ruling the street. They cannot take the law into their own hands. They must leave it to the professionals.
We can get somewhere anywhere between 3 and 4 minutes. So the front seat TFO, who sits in the front left, they use the camera to gather evidence and things like that. They're also our primary navigator, so we use Met Geographia's or Collins books as they are now.
If the pilot screws up and we get lost, then we navigate using an A to Z. When a police helicopter is hovering, that means we are trying to read the street names. The problem is, the thermal imaging camera cannot read street names. The cork. Which means if we get lost at night, we have to ditch the chopper and take the tube.
Technologically, this is a massive development from the Squirrel aircraft. At a very base level, it's a huge space.
No, but this always happened with Windows Vista. The screen freezes up. That high. As soon as we are in the air, it wants to download a new version. When it's like this, we have to switch it off and switch it back on again. There are 4 little screens, and there's the big screen. This means I can monitor 4 different social medias at the same time.
It's obviously a great pleasure to be operating a brand new aircraft, state-of-the-art machine. It's very exciting, just like big boys' toys. Very nice aircraft to operate.
They are seeing for the first time what £15 million can buy.
You've got capacity in the back there to carry 6 people safely.
Let's have a look.
It makes a massive difference.
Gosh, that makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. There's room to swing a cat. Why would we want to swing a cat? We've got megapixels and a zoom button. The camera is in that stupid dome thing under the copter. 50 million pixel, 50 million quid, and we're chasing bloody cats. Doris knows more about cats. They all look the same to me.
They're quite nimble, so when you have officers in cars chasing them, pursuing them, if they go down alleyways, building lines, parks, anything, walkways, those sorts of things, they obviously can't follow them. That's the best thing about us, is that we're airborne and we can follow them. We can then track them and then get units towards them.
The chase is taking place less than a minute from the Skycops base, and a second helicopter is already being scrambled.
There he is. Past the junction now, good.
No time now to learn any new tricks. This calls for experience, and Rear Observer PC Norman has plenty of that. He's been a Skycop for 8 years.
Yeah, ground units from 89, we are overhead downlinking.
Downlinking means the helicopter's pictures are being beamed into New Scotland Yard.
They didn't have many places to go, so they ran to a wall, which unfortunately from their point of view, when they looked over the top of it, they'd have seen there was about a 40-foot drop. It looked from where we were as if they were prepared to take the risk of jumping, which in my view would have probably put their lives at risk.
but it's so dark that officers on the ground can't see a thing. They need the Skycop's thermal imaging camera.
There are a group of people in the middle of the park. We're hoping he's in amongst them, Mother.
Just get the camera on it in case he decides to go for it. That's it. That's where you are. Good.
In open spaces and recreation areas, you often find cats. They mingle unnoticed with members of the public, and it's our job to find them.
Again, it doesn't take long.
Yeah, one's running.
Let's stay with him, mate.
Yeah, he's running towards the house.
One of the group just took off like a bat out of hell straight across the park. For the officers on the ground, it would have been completely dark. They wouldn't have had a very good idea as to where he was going. But we followed him.
If we can, I know.
Just confirm he's still on the move.
Yeah, he's gone into an address actually. I've got an officer walking through the park towards the back of fences.
Once we're overhead, we get a much better view, especially when it's night time. We've got our thermal cameras, because we can obviously see each side of the house, whereas ground officers can only see the side that they're on. We're also in a better position to manage officers on the ground around the location.
Yeah, the officer at the back of the fence. You're at the right place there. Caution though, I think there are a couple of dogs there.
We then also have our thermal camera, which is invaluable, especially at night, and especially in the winter months as well, even by day. And that's an extremely powerful thermal camera that displays a grayscale. Black can be hot or cold, depending on how we set it, and it goes all the way through to white. It's over 20 years old, but it's still, I think, one of the best things that we have. Shoots, I think, is our bread and butter. I think we give a good insight to the control rooms and the TACADs to what we can see, and gives them a good idea of tactics and risk and things like that. I'd like to think that if we can see them on our thermal camera, we're going to get them. They do try and hide, they do try and pretend to be trees, and you know, they try and like go round the trees as we come round, and it's just silliness. We can still see them. It's heat, it's not light, so they'll have to do quite a good job to get away from our thermal cameras, and we do generally, when we have them, we do generally keep them.
I'm just going to rewind my tape and have a look for you.
And this is where the new technology on the new aircraft really came into its own.
Yeah, from India 99, we're just reviewing our tape.
Simon was able to go back to the footage that we just recorded.
He's in there.
He'd obviously thought that he could use it as a rabbit hole.
Oh, someone on the roof.
The rabbit is out of the hat and in danger.
Just for a bit.
Active message on the roof of the premises.
As soon as he went up onto the roof, he put on a bit of a spectacle for the local residents, standing right up on top of the chimney pot. He obviously wanted to go out with a bang.
He's standing on top of a chimney stack at the moment, so it is quite precarious. In fact, I'd suggest no more units, as there are quite a lot of people there, particularly if you're going to end up negotiating with him, etc.
And we're quite keen not to encourage the drama, as it were.
In the interests of safety, PC Norman decides to take the helicopter off the scene.
We might then decide to leave in order that he doesn't play up to us and his friends. That's the decision that I made in this instance.
Right, we ought to head for home.
We left them to it. He wasn't going anywhere.
Some viewers may find these images disturbing. A scene that is becoming all too familiar. A surreal nightmare of the feline variety. Whole areas of the city that are closed off. Police were completely unprepared for disorder on this scale.
The superintendent is a right knob. We were told the fugitive was armed and dangerous. Dan likes to lean out of the helicopter with his rifle. Dan says this is his favourite part in First Blood because of the helicopter. I said, Dan, the police officer in the helicopter falls to his death. It was a split-second decision. Sometimes those situations, it is either the cat or us. The actions that the officers took were in the interest of public safety. He had concealed himself under a vehicle, clearly intending to launch an ambush. Sometimes, en route, we check the firearms are operational. This happened to be one of those times. I was the officer that took the shot. As far as we knew, a dangerous fugitive had been neutralised. But unfortunately, it was Charlie.
The rioting seemed to be subsiding, and then the devastating news that Charlie had been shot dead. They say all cats are grey in the dark, but this time it was literally true. A police helicopter using thermal imaging to track a fugitive. But unfortunately, the cameras only work in grayscale, a limitation that would have tragic consequences. Mistaken identity that would end the life of a celebrity. The star of 1970s child safety commercials gunned down like a common cat. A familiar personality to a generation now mourning the loss. But to cats in the United Kingdom, Charlie was much more than that. It was obvious immediately that Charlie's death had affected them deeply. To begin with, there was nothing. Everything was quiet. The cats had been causing trouble for days, and then nothing. No cats on the street, not even a meow. They were not even collecting their food. They were planning, waiting, and nobody believed they were capable of such a massive organized response. So silently, they gathered and prepared, using primordial instinct that human beings no longer have.
It started with a relatively small level of civil unrest. Police had clashed with groups of mostly tabby cats over the weekend. And by Monday, the cats had dispersed and the situation contained. But then something happened that would break this city in two. A tragedy that would form a rift between species.
We'll hear from those whose homes and livelihoods were destroyed, and we'll ask what can be done to prevent similar scenes from being repeated on our streets. Regular viewers will remember you really were in the thick of it there the night the riots hit. What are your thoughts a month on?
Well, Riz, when we were here last, it was more Mogadishu High Street than London Road, Croydon. We couldn't really believe what we were seeing on the night, to be honest. Myself and cameraman Patrick Brenner were driving down London Road. Every single shop on either side of the road was being looted, cars abandoned and burning in the middle of the street. Then, of course, it was our turn to experience what some people in this neighbourhood already had.
Go, 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 go. Okay, you have to run down. Go, keep going, keep going, keep going.
We've just been attacked. A rock has come through the window and they're continuing to attack us. We're taking a right off the main drag now.
And as it went on, they weren't just using bricks and slabs of wall, but petrol bombs and burning wheelie bins.
They've set fire to a police van.
People living here were watching from their windows and gardens. It's 10:30 and this has been going on for hours now, and there's no let up. It's relentless. That was a police van burnt out. Up on the street that way, there's another police van on fire, and then down that way, I can see flames rising up too, with a lineup of police with their riot shields out, and things just constantly being thrown at them.
And in Hartlepool, dozens were arrested after officers were attacked. A police van set on fire and local shops vandalised. Nationwide violence followed, from Bristol to Belfast, Hull, Blackpool, Newcastle, Leeds, Stoke, Manchester and Liverpool.
I've come down from Leeds this morning. This is where I'm from, but I live in Leeds now. But I was just crying my eyes out yesterday watching it. It's just awful.
Smashed in the windows on this new build estate. Then they crossed over and they went one end to the other of Garnet Street, smashing up every single car on the street and quite a few front windows as families were carrying inside with children.
Attention, attention. This is a police message.
Belfast, Plymouth, Darlington. The streets ablaze. Another night of rampaging and rioting. The police seemingly unable to stop its spread.
While in Birmingham, tensions around a possible attack boiled over.
So all around this area, the cordons are now going up. For the second night running, we've got copycat acts of violence. This is what the police feared. And this was the view of one local eyewitness.
They don't care. I've never seen such a disregard for human life. Nice little anarchists. I hope they have a nice little party. I hope they rot in hell. Because the grief they have caused people, the fear they've put in people's hearts, decent people who have done nothing to anyone, and the fear in them.
The police will obviously deal with any emerging situations as they consider best appropriate for those situations.
A bus was burnt out. Police were guarding a supermarket, but they couldn't stop a pharmacy being attacked. The sense of crisis is underlined by the Prime Minister's decision to cut short his holiday and return home.
England's football match against the Netherlands, which was due to take place on Wednesday, has been cancelled because police are overstretched.
There's been lots of vandalism here. Now the police have sealed off the high street. The underground station, the tube station, which would normally be very busy, is closed, and several shops down that way have been pretty comprehensively looted. Sports shops, electronic shops, mobile phone shops, and so on. Pretty much doing whatever they wanted. They simply helped themselves. They seem so young.
And the people are asking, how did this happen? The heart of our community has turned into a war zone. What's going on? Real confusion, it seems, to Mr. Lammy, the local MP, about what caused all this. He's running for mayor next year. I think he's the only politician to have jumped on the bandwagon, which is rare enough anyway. What he said was, what he says was, he says the austerity cuts are responsible.
I don't think the austerity cuts are responsible, but they certainly won't make them. Certainly make it worse.
Later, the British police condemned a wave of, quote, copycat criminal activity right across the capital. The head of the British Interior Ministry, Theresa May, has come back from holiday to try and deal with the crisis after 2 consecutive nights of violence.
I mean, there's some people who want to, you know, score some points, and Ken Livingstone, my very good friend Ken Livingstone, who is standing for mayor next year, look, he put out a statement saying, look, you know, attacking the government over this. I think that might be slightly unfair to blame this government for what went on over the weekend, even though I'm no fan of this government. And the weather too, let's not forget this is the summer. We need a bit of rain to douse down the streets of North London.
Martin Bentham, do you think because we need rain, they took to the streets and started setting fire to buildings? After a weekend of destruction, looting and arson across London, questions are being asked about the root causes behind the violence, how such rioting appeared to break out so suddenly, and why it became such a vicious and destructive affair.
What happened on our streets was absolutely appalling behaviour, and to send a very clear message it's wrong and it won't be tolerated is what our criminal justice system should be doing.
The Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall broke off their holiday to visit some of the hardest hit areas in London.
The sheer terror that people experienced, and I think, you know, still the unease is there, wondering, you know, what might happen at any stage. But I think the other thing is important to remember is it's, as many were saying, it's just a small minority that created this mayhem.
This was the scene over London this morning. There's been surprise at the scale and ferocity of the violence.
People find it hard to equate this sort of cute, cuddly ball of fur with the killing machine, which they actually are.
Had they been more effective at doing some of the things they were trying to do, we would have seen people dying on the day.
How would you describe the national mood now?
Fractious, I would probably describe it as unresolved.
As we've seen,
in certain circumstances. People talk about a perfect storm of all sorts of things. Certain circumstances, that blows up, and it's blown up this weekend.
Right, to say you're not going to get any more resources in the immediate future. You've got what you've got, you're going to have to try and hold the high street. He said to me, "Are you joking?"
I mean, it was almost impossible to breathe. Smoke started to billow out from the roof, and my fear was something in there is going to blow. What will happen if the roof collapses or a brick wall falls down? You know, someone's going to get hurt.
And I can see just in the distance a car that was set on fire just about an hour ago.
The rear seat TFO is our tactical commander. They are in control of everything the aircraft does, down to what job we go to, what we prioritise. They're in control of the radios, the comms for the aircraft, the command and control on the ground, so everything else the TAC commander does from the back.
The new lad in other copterer does not know his arse from his elbow. Where's the eject?
Saturday 6th of August. Police helicopters flying over London relay alarming pictures of disturbance unfolding in Tottenham, North London. Superintendent Roger Gomm orders riot police to be mobilised before heading to the control room at Lambeth.
Once I'd arrived, I checked that the service mobilisation plan had been activated and, you know, where are the resources? Are they there yet? Are they on their way? And it was at that stage someone actually piped up, "Well, they're still on amber, sir. Would you like me to mobilise to red?" I think my prompt answer was yes, immediately.
There's petrol bombs being thrown. There's bricks being thrown. They had control at that point, and I think a lot of them knew that.
I've never seen that level of hatred towards the police.
For 5 days last summer, England was looted and burned.
As we've exited the car park, the van was getting constantly pelted. The thing that probably scared me the most was that the side door was about to fly open.
Some people think that the police are some anonymous robot out there. We're not. Back at home, my wife and my kids were scared.
I kind of had to see for myself what I was reading about on Twitter and friends were texting me about, and what I saw was pretty extraordinary.
We're talking wheelie bins on fire and wheeled towards us. We're talking bottles from the off-licence down the road, been set alight, been made into firebombs and thrown at us. I was calling for more backup. I asked for the public order trained officers to be deployed as soon as they possibly could.
The kit that we were wearing, obviously, is very uncomfortable and it's very warm. It was hard to try to see what is going on in front of you. You're very hot and emotional at the same time. We were under attack.
At the Met Special Operations Room in Lambeth, Roger Gomm has a bird's eye view.
We've got the helicopter television downlink. Then we can link into the thousands of cameras across London. And actually, we were able to see quite a lot of the disorder. They were coming under a fierce attack.
At 11:30 p.m, a unit from Fulham arrives to relieve the front line. The experience still haunts Inspector Andre Ramsey.
We then got the nod to go forward up the road at the double. That meant running in full kit, helmet on, shield, running up a distance of around 800 metres.
They pushed the mob back into the burning waste.
The noise then started to increase dramatically, and communication became much more challenging, purely because of the noise. It was almost impossible to hear the radios.
The cats had been constructing medieval catapults. Feral cats would target a specific district. They had been collecting bricks in rubble bags.
And so that was sending out a very clear message to me that certainly if anybody got separated, it could all come to a very grisly end.
Using social media posts to organize civil unrest. Unsuspecting members of the public would share these posts, thinking they were simply cat pictures. This was the last thing that the police were expecting.
On our very first short shield run forward, I was knocked unconscious. I don't know what hit me, but it was clearly something extremely heavy. I mean, literally the lights went out. And the next thing I remember was being hauled up back onto my feet. I just shook my head, tried to regain my vision, and there was no other option but to carry on. The biggest consideration I had personally was how long was this going to go on for and how long would I last?
The chief inspector operating in the high road phoned me up to tell me they're exhausted, they need a break. Is there any relief for them? Is there any more resources coming? And I had to say to him, Graham, you're not going to get any more resources in the immediate future. You've got what you've got. You're going to have to try and hold the high street. And he wasn't sure if I was telling him the truth. And in fact, he said to me, are you joking?
Oh, you are joking.
And it was frightening for the officers. I'm totally frank, it was frightening for me. I've never seen anything like it. I pray to God I never see anything like it again.
When I got back to the yard there, totally covered in dust, debris, glass, ripped. My boots were actually cut open, only to be met by a chief inspector who quite happily asked me, could I get back in for 2 o'clock that afternoon?
When it all kicked off, that was one of my first ever shifts. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Because I don't know what to do.
So we arrive in a very, very hostile situation, and we just immediately deploy from our dog van.
Who wouldn't be frightened? I certainly was frightened, because at this point you don't know how things are going to escalate.
It's now a national emergency.
The wee creatures gathered in the streets. It was already a ridiculously large number of cats.
Some people might tend to argue with a police officer. If a 40-kilo German Shepherd is running down the road at them, they'll tend not to argue and perhaps disperse.
They obviously want to do you some serious harm.
But when they charged forward, they became like a wall of fur and claws.
For almost 2 hours, police now come under fierce attack. Overwhelmed and on unfamiliar territory, the unit commander makes a tactical decision to withdraw.
I've lived nothing like this in my life, ever. This is... Jesus Christ, this is absolutely crazy.
In Manchester, senior police officers fear the worst.
Is it going to be okay to let Dan talk? You know what he's like.
Tuesday, August the 9th. Watching the streets from police headquarters is Federation rep Ian Hansen.
The commander in charge of the operation in Salford had to withdraw police officers from the patch purely to ensure that nobody was seriously hurt or killed.
Some of my officers were quite dispirited by that. They'd achieved something. There was a risk to them in doing so, but we'd been effective and we'd done a good job. And they weren't really understanding quite why we were being pulled back and not retaining possession of the ground that we'd won effectively.
They issued the helicopters with rubber bullets, but they do not fit in the rifle. We tried dropping German shepherds onto the cats, but the miserable dogs refused to jump.
One resident in the area said, "It's raining cats and dogs."
Facing total breakdown of law and order, some borough commanders call for baton rounds or rubber bullets, which have never been used on mainland Britain.
It was the Gold Commander's decision not to deploy them, and I can fully understand his rationale for that. It was based on his fear that the situation would escalate.
I wasn't prepared to authorise the use of baton rounds. On the day I told the officers on the street that it is because we want to avoid escalation. But the truth is that we wanted to use the water cannons. We had 3 water trucks from Northern Ireland. They cost a fortune. If I didn't use them, it would affect efficiency rating of the constabulary. Police procedure to avoid the truth in all circumstances.
There's pops from the various cars. I think some of those are tyres, concerned about petrol tanks going. It's too dangerous to get the fire brigade up there. We haven't got the situation under control. And we've now got to get people out of their homes because we're fearful that these cars are going to explode and people are going to be injured in their homes. Our visors get steamed up, it's hard to see, it's very, very hard to hear. Radio's going on, a lot of helicopter noise, alarms.
And they were running out over the barriers, jumped across. They saw the BBC car. They rocked it and tipped it over. And then they set it on fire.
But we cannot have officers stood behind shields just taking bricks. And even if that water cannon ends up becoming a magnet for taking bricks, it means less of my colleagues are going to get injured.
You saw those scenes of them backed against the wall. We've been running the images this morning, and I'm sure people at home have seen it as well.
I would have loved CS, baton rounds and water cannon to be used then, because I thought I was going to die that night. There's officers here with less than 10-year service on the front streets will have never been in violent situations.
First thing, I heard a colleague shout, "Get your baton out, get your baton out." And I'm like, fumbling around with this new equipment that's like all the pouches tight on my baton, and I couldn't quite get it out because I'm like, I've never had to use it before.
It was bizarre. They had constructed all these dangerous contraptions. Officers would find them abandoned after we had cleared the area. Made from shopping trolleys, old pallets, anything they could get hold of. Basically, a catapult is a barbaric siege weapon from ancient times. It is a mechanism that civilization has been perfecting for thousands of years. And it works quite simply by changing potential energy into kinetic energy. There are variations. Some use a counterbalance, others use tension or torsion springs. Ultimately, the end result is the same. A police officer gets hit by a brick, and obviously that is not a very pleasant experience. The etymology of the word cat itself comes from the Latin word catapultes, which mean to throw objects at police officers. When you take that into account, it was a massive oversight.
Rocks, boulders, that bits of masonry that you can throw.
No one could have understood or envisaged the sheer size and scale that we experienced. I defy anybody to really have predicted that.
So if this continues to escalate, and I have to say, all of this was sickeningly and so predictable, in fact, I did predict it on social media, that really the establishment should have seen it coming, should have been better prepared, and shouldn't have allowed it to get to the situation it has now got to.
Is social media and these pictures
are they making it harder for police? Is there more copycat rioting these days than 10 years ago?
I think it's exactly the same.
Police officers can use reasonable force. That begs the question that when we're seeing probably the most serious disorder for years in Greater Manchester, what is reasonable force?
When you're planning a policing operation, there is a cost involved. Remember, whether they're working overtime or, more importantly, for me, you've taken them away from their local boroughs to police an event somewhere else. So there's always a cost involved.
It's just another tool in the police box of tools. It's a tactic that can be used, and it'll keep my officers safe and stop them getting injured. And it's not going to be ideal in every avenue of disorder, but in the more serious, I think it'd be a really effective tool to use.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it, Peter, that we have the situation in Northern Ireland where there is power to use it, but it's frequently not used, in fact, isn't currently particularly very much used. So why not have that in the armoury, as Brian says?
Because they're often ineffective.
Our specific tasking, we were told, is to protect the fire brigade and the Salford Precinct market area from attack. So we wanted to create a buffer zone so they can't get hit by the missiles, so they can do their work.
While GMP riot squads conduct a roving patrol, the Cheshire unit of 25 officers is left to hold the precinct on its own. They come under intense attack.
As I said, Dan, if the German Shepherds do not want to jump, you cannot push them.
We were told, get your balaclavas on, get your NATO helmets on. My serial ended up with no shields. There wasn't enough. It's my inspector just shouting, everybody get out now, get out. I said I'll jump on the van. The driver then employed a tactic that is to actually reverse at the group. So he started actually reversing, and I was quite shocked at this, like, we're going towards them, not away from them. And he kept doing this backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And he said afterwards he was just getting massive thumbs up from our colleagues, and realised that this was working.
Move forward to your fifth wheelie bin on the left, which is glowing hot like a Christmas tree. Okay, sorry, not that one. So keep going. There was two, then there's a one, and then the next one. So not that one.
There is space. There is space for 6 people or 12 German Shepherds. Ask Dan, how do I switch between the big and the little screens? If he was in my copter, I would have thrown him out into the Thames. Dan encountered an air pocket, so the dogs had to go.
As we've exited the car park, the van was getting constantly pelted. The female prisoner just screaming her head off. She was massively scared, but I was just forcing her down, very scared that something was going to fly straight through that window and crack her on the head. The adrenaline was going through all of us. The thing that probably scared me the most was that the side door was about to fly open and someone was going to come in and just drag me off. And then, totally unbeknownst to me, a brick had actually come through the window and had very nearly caught me on the head right at the front of the van. But it meant we had a hole in our back doors. My colleague was holding a kind of handle to try and keep these doors shut. He then screamed, "I'm being attacked."
Went in the daylight, and all of a sudden went quite black because obviously there's quite a lot of buildings, vehicles on fire. Immediately on getting out of the van, you could feel the tension.
As in other parts of the country, Greater Manchester Police say they were overwhelmed that night by the scale and nature of the disorder.
The cat riots were spread over 8 cities. I have represented multiple constabularies in this matter. In all, we lost 12 police officers and 17 dogs. We are hoping to find them before the end of the month.
It's impossible to know how many cats died in the riot. The streets were full of sludge and their bodies were churned with grime, like a piece of fabric.
Boris Johnson, when he was Mayor of London, did, I think, purchase 3 second-hand water cannon.
For a fraction of the price at the cost of taxpayers, wasn't it?
I mean, in retrospect, do you look back on that as being a bad decision?
No, because water cannon, whether they've got dye or not, can be indiscriminate. So you can have a member of the media there who's trying to film, who might have their camera swept out of their hand, they get covered in dye, and then some police officer who's not fully aware of all the circumstances ends up battening them.
Baton rounds won't affect the efficiency rating because they are cheap.
The efficiency rating is our primary concern.
During the early hours of Tuesday morning, politicians and senior police officers arrive in the capital.
We had to come back to London, so I left very early hours of Tuesday morning and was available, of course, to attend the first Cabinet Office briefing room that was chaired by the Prime Minister on the Tuesday morning. It was, as one would expect, pretty tense. Quite rightly, the government was saying, why aren't you doing more?
Once again, it seemed to me there must have been a directive from either the Home Office or the Lord Chancellor or some source behind the scenes saying, and it's the old story, I've heard it so many times, deterrence. You know, it's the big stick approach, which is, prison is the deterrent. So we'll start off with really heavy sentences and this will shake them up. 4 years, 5 years.
So they can be recognised and picked up and identified later by police. Would you support that?
No.
Following the government meeting, Acting Met Commissioner Tim Godwin promises an additional 10,000 officers to police the capital. Many people questioned why he had not provided them sooner.
It struck me that the scaling up was proportionate. If the Commissioner had over-prescribed what he required and the Metropolitan Police Authority received a substantial bill from other forces, they would have asked him what he thought he was doing.
David Cameron, as I say, used the phrase feral because it's about dehumanising, removing their difference and the variety within those different groups and removing their humanity. And once you do that, you don't have to understand them because, hey, they're lesser than us. So why should we bother to understand what their thoughts, feelings, and motives are?
In fact, it was Tacitus who said, "Cats are a mischievous evil that, like all vile things, gravitate to Rome." This confused scholars because it wasn't until Isaac Newton in the 17th century and his famous alleged apple incident that the word gravity infers the attribute of attraction. Prior to that, the word gravitas simply means weight.
And often all that happens in other countries once they've been hit with a water cannon is they run away soaking wet to 2 streets down the road and carry on breaking windows or throwing petrol bombs there.
Following unexpected election results, a new Prime Minister will emerge from number 10.